Oh, I got it.
Hey, welcome everyone. You're
Welcome everyone.
spotlighted.
Yeah, welcome everyone. I just wanted to introduce why we're here, who I am. So welcome to our event titled Breaking Barriers, Empowering People with Disabilities in the Job Market, presented by Career Services and Accessibility Services. My name is Eeyore Andruk. I am the Assistant Director of Career Services and Adjunct Professor at Berkeley College. I'm a white male. I have brown hair. It's combed forward with spikes in the front, and I wear glasses. I'm wearing a blue polo shirt with Berkeley College logo and a Berkeley College Zoom background. At Berkeley College, our students are not numbers. They are multifaceted individuals, each with a unique set of needs and career goals. And this is how we treat them. In my time working here at Berkeley College, it's going on 7 years in the Career Services Department, I have had the pleasure of working with some of our neurodiverse students and grads when placing them into internships and into employment. While there have been some challenges, working with these students to help and place these students has been rewarding and an excellent learning experience for me, both from a career counselor level and from an employer relations level, as well as from a personal level. Challenges include having conversations with students or graduates about their disability, which they don't always disclose, as well as advocating for their neurodiverse superpower. According to a January 19th, 2023 article from Forbes.com titled "The Benefits of Our Neurodiverse Workforce," it's particularly important for teams to include neurodivergent employees because it can help them strengthen their company culture. Building a diverse team where different skill sets and ways of thinking are valued will set you up for success in the long run. There is no correct or incorrect way of thinking, so having a diverse team members can enhance the quality of your workforce. So this is what brings us here today. I'd like to introduce Catherine Wu, our Director of Accessibility Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, Eeyore. My name is Catherine Wu. I am an Asian American female, middle-aged. I have long black hair, wearing glasses, and I have a blue blouse on with a little sprinkling of flowers in a beige office, beige in my background. So I'm so happy to see all of you here. I've been at Berkeley for 17 years or so. My role here, I've been a personal counselor, and now I started doing the accessibility services for our online students. And now I'm so grateful to be in this position where, trying to make the school more accessible and changing the culture of our college, and always striving to be better, right? And so I'm going to introduce, we have three speakers from two different organizations, Heightened Independence and Progress, which is a center for independent living in New Jersey. And we also have, we also have ACCES-VR here with us, but I'm going to begin first with Blagica and Jesse. I'm going to spotlight them. There you are. So Heightened Independence and Progress is one of 11 centers for independent living in New Jersey, and there are 500 of these nationwide. All of HIP's programs and services embody the principles of the independent living philosophy, which asserts that people with disabilities should have the same civil rights, choices, and control as do people without disabilities. HIP currently serves over thousands of individuals and families in Bergen and Hudson counties. Blagica Jankuloska works in community outreach for HIPCIL. She graduated from Ramapo College with a BA in psychology. She is passionate about fitness and equality for people with disabilities and hopes to teach others that their best advocate is themselves. We also have Jesse Schwartzman, who is a community advocate and support coordinator at HIPCIL. Since graduating from Montclair State University, he has worked or is currently working in retail, legal services, political campaigns, and nonprofits. He is the Vice Chair of the State Independent Living Council and Services, Disability Advocacy, and Political Organizations. So please welcome our speakers, and I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm going to have Jesse share our presentation, then we'll get started. What we're going to be covering today is some employment tips and tricks for people with disabilities. I'm going to start it off and then Jesse's going to finish up from beginning. Let's see if, of course it wouldn't. Slideshow. Where am I going? Here. That one. There we go. Technical difficulties for the win. What we're going to be presenting is working with a disability. The first thing I want to start by saying to you is don't let your disability define you. I promise you there is a job out there for everyone at every mobility level. I'm going to give you a little bit of an example. Before I started here, I interviewed with 30 different employment places before I was even hired. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. You just have to have a little bit of patience. And I can't see my slide, so just give me 1 second. Knowing your limits, but never trying to stop trying to break them. Yes, there's a point where you're going to get to where you're going to say, that's it, I've reached my limit. But I want to encourage everyone listening to this presentation just to push a little bit harder, because I promise you the outcomes and the rewards are worth it. Now we're going to do some work. We're going to talk about resumes. I put a sample resume up here. You're going to start with the basic about me, or if you're looking at an older resume, it would say objective. What you want to put is a summary of what your skill set is or what you're applying for. I'll go into this in more detail in the next slide. So we're just going to kind of breeze through this. The experience, start with your most current job here. So if you were going to go, I'm pointing like you can all see me. How funny. You're going to go the date that you started to present, explain what you did, and then go on below that. Education, if you got your associates, you would start with your associates and then put your bachelor's underneath. Your skills, what qualifications do you have that fit the job that you're actually applying for? That goes here. Remember, you're presenting your best version of you in this piece of paper, because this is what they're going to see before they see you. For activities, you can put things like you're volunteering, if you're in church, those kind of things go here. Remember, it's only one page. Anything more than one page, they're not going to look at it at all. And make sure that your address, phone number, email, LinkedIn is all current and updated. Because the last thing you want to do is get the interview and them not being able to reach you. Now let's break down the headings. If you want to put this together on your own without using a template, your heading is the information at the top of the paper. Your name, your email, those type of things go here. Objective about me, your thesis summary, the reason you're applying for the job. Like, let's say I was using myself, and as an example, I would go, has 8 years of customer service experience, looking to further my employment in customer service, and I have X, Y, and Z skills to explain to you why I think I'm a good fit. Keep it short, 2-3 sentences at most. Your education is the introduction to what you've been able to accomplish. Educational experience and degrees are listed. Remember, keep everything in one page, make your margins perfect so that it all looks even. Experience supporting details include responsibilities, skills, and accomplishments that you've accomplished within the current jobs that you've worked or previous jobs that you worked that highlight the experience that will match up to the job that you're looking for. Other relevant and conclusion, if you have volunteers, if you've won some kind of award, professional memberships, that can also be listed. I didn't put it here. What you want to keep in mind is when you're doing a resume, some will ask you for references. It's become a market of where references are upon request. You can bring them with you, But if they don't ask for them, I wouldn't offer them. Let the employer kind of do a little bit of work on their own. Things to avoid in terms of an objective: don't make it too general. It will be ignored and made irrelevant. Depending on the employer, the objective may limit your chances of getting the job. So make sure that it's more suited to show off your skills and tie in the job that you're working for, but don't like over explain in that little paragraph, because people are just kind of going to breeze through it. Human error. Remember, you may not always update your objective to reflect the position you are applying for. So I suggest once you finish your presentation, save a copy of your resume and go back to your original and print off your original before you do your next presentation or your next interview. Like, almost have a baseline to start with. Professional emails are a must. Avoid things like hotstuff@gmail or something along the lines of pretty girl 101, those kind of things. Spelling errors and incomplete sentences. What I would say with this is make sure when you get your resume completed, if you're working with a family member, have someone look it over. If you're working with a DBRS counselor or an ACCES-VR counselor and you're looking to do this independently, make sure they look it over before you submit it anywhere. Now we're going to go into the basics of a cover letter and why it's a good example or a good choice to use them. The cover letters will introduce you and your resume to the employer. It'll also explain why you think you're a good match for the organization and the position. And then it demonstrates your ability to help establish your credibility. In the cover letter, when you write it, what you want to do is have the description of the job that you're applying for to make sure that you can match up the skills that they're looking for with the skills you actually possess to be able to attain the job. Draws your reader's attention to specific qualifications, and it's a sample of your writing skills. Even though you're thinking it's not a paper or an essay and you're not in school, your cover letter will show and demonstrate to an employer that you have the writing capability to at least put together a professional email based on your cover letter. And it also explains, you can also put in the end, and like, I look forward to hearing from you, or when can I reach out to you for an interview where we can go over the things that I've presented to you, like a good closing topic. Do your research before you begin. Carefully read the job description. Circle keywords, values, skills, requirements that you know that you need for the presentation. Make a list of how you can prove you have the skills that are there. Prove you can meet these by using examples like, I kept a 3.8 GPA while being the treasurer, library of honors council. Show them that you can multitask by keeping up your grades and being part of the community. Show them it'll show them that you're committed to doing the job because you've committed to outside sources that aren't just academic. It will show that you're a motivated individual, your communication skills. Again, and it'll also show that you can multitask. Research the job and the company. What I'd like to tell people is the one thing the job coach told me: do your research. Make sure that you have at least one question to ask the employer or the person who's interviewing you, so that it shows that you're not here just to get a job. You're here to make connections and get a career, because anybody can go in and apply for a sales job. But what I like to tell people is, regardless of what you're applying for or regardless of what you're looking to do, you want to show the person interviewing you that you have a passion for what you're looking to do. And your research will also help you identify a contact person, so that you have someone to address the cover letter to, and two, it'll give you kind of a sense of oh, this is the person I'll be sitting down with. So it's like sometimes the the anonymousness of who you're interviewing causes anxiety for the person doing the interview. Cover letter, outline your opening, address the person you found in your research. If that's not applicable, you want to do dear hiring manager or dear staffing director, or if you know the surname but not the like the full name, you could do dear Mr. Johnson or dear Miss Johnson and do it that way. Paragraphs 2 and 3 is the purpose to catch the reader's attention, state the school, university that you attended, your major, the position you're applying for, mention where you've heard about it, and then mention why you think you're a good fit. The last 2 paragraphs you would do describe the most important qualifications that probably that you circled in your research. Like if you think you're a good fit because you have the most communication skills and it's a communication job, you want to make sure that you connect that this is what you're asking for and this is how I can do it and this is how I'm showing you. And you want to mention in a sense that there's explain real-time examples of the skills that you're expressing. So in my 8 years of telemarketing experience, I was able to answer 250 phone calls in a span of 5 hours, like link the whole thing to, so it all kind of, it's like baking a cake. You want to make sure all the ingredients are there so the cake rises and doesn't fall flat. And then special projects and awards, that's something to mention if you see that the company likes to hire people with massive accolades. It's not, like you're not looking to show off in any sense, you're just looking to express that this is why I'm a good fit and here are my examples. For your closing, sum up your qualifications and reveals how you will proceed to follow up. Like I said, you're going to say, I look forward to hearing from you soon. I'm available Mondays and Tuesdays at 2 p.m. if you want to reach out and give me a call back. Request an interview in some way if you feel, strongly about it that way. For example, I am eager to speak with you and discuss my possible contributions to your company, or I want to go over my qualifications. Feel free to contact me at your convenience. Please don't forget to say thank you, or thank you for reading this, or thank you for your time. It shows a little bit of kind of finesse, if you will. Let's see. Interview with confidence, dress to impress. I start with that because what you put on, I mentioned this at work and Jesse can attest. There are days that I'll say, I don't feel right, but if I look put together, by the end of the day, I feel better. So start off by looking your best to feel your best, because it'll run through your anxieties. Like put on your favorite shirt, that kind of thing, so that you have something that you're comfortable with. We're going to go through basic interview phrases and tips and tricks. I didn't want to sit here and give questions on how to answer them, but I'm going to just give you phrases to work with when going over your qualifications, why you want the job, and your strengths. So something you could say during your interview is, I understand this is a high pressure job, but I want to assure you I have I work well under pressure. I develop important skills, and list the skills. If you have A, B, C, and D skills that go with the job, go. I have skill. You can go with I develop some skills in typing. I have, you can do things like, my communication is on point. I was part of the debate team. I'm okay with public speaking. I don't mind working in a busy environment, and I have good people skills, because 90% of getting the interview is, or a big part of working through the interview process is the person interviewing you wants to get a sense that you can work with other people, because you're not going to be in an office with your supervisor and yourself. phrases for why you want the job. You can go with things like, because it aligns with my qualifications, then explain how. You can also go with, I want this job because I'm impressed by the quality of your products and services. Do your research, have examples. If you like the way that they support philanthropic companies, say that, and then say, I volunteered in churches. I've done all of that myself. So it's nice to work with a company that gives back. And then phrases about talking with your strengths. You can say things, I've always been a team player. I'm an excellent communicator. I am a troubleshooter. I'm self-motivated. You can go with, I'm very organized, have great time management skills, but that's really something that you have to decide on your own, and you have to kind of sit down and break down yourself, figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are so that you know how to answer what they're asking you. These are just examples. Don't use these verbatim unless they fit with your criteria and you're comfortable saying, I'm a good team player, or I have excellent communication skills, because the last thing you want to do is over deliver, because once you get on the job and they see that you can't deliver what you promised during your up for a difficult transition. Okay, so we're going to go with some more tips of what to do, what not to do, things to do. I'm going to start with the get help portion because I think it's important. If you're working with accessibility or like a DVRS or ACCES-VR vocational rehab, make sure that one, you show up to your meetings, because it's not only your time, it's their time too. If they've committed to helping you, you have to show them that you're committed to getting the job. I say tell them that you're looking for a job, but be specific. Tell them what kind of job you want to do, because the last thing you want to do is have the job coach or the counselor tell you, oh, I found you a job at Dollar General and the interview is Monday. If you're not comfortable working in like a grocery store setting, or if you have, anxiety with a lot of people, that's not going to be a good fit. But what you should do truthfully is be upfront with the person who's trying to help you, because the more they know about you, the easier it will be for them to find you the job that's actually a good fit for you. Be proactive, get the job you want. I did a lot of the legwork for myself when I worked with the vocational rehab here in New Jersey. So I looked for jobs, I looked for openings, and I would send them to the job coach, and I would be like, I'm not sure how to fill this out, but I think this would be a good fit for me. Remember that you're working as a team. The job coach isn't there to do the work for you. They're assisting you. So you have to be your best advocate and your best support system. Even though they're there, remember the person interviewing you is interviewing you. They're not interviewing you and the job coach or the counselor. Because at some point, I think in New Jersey, it was 3 months after you get hired, the job coach doesn't do the long-term follow-up. So they don't really, it's you and the supervisor, or you and the boss. It's not you and the job coach and the boss on a permanent basis. Things to not do. Don't complain about a former employer. You want to put your best foot forward. You don't want them to think that you are a complainer or something along the lines of, oh, okay, so if we hire this person and something goes wrong, this person is going to bash us on every platform humanly known to man, or those kind of things. Don't make your disability the focus of your interview. Yes, it's there, and Jesse will go over disclosure and advocacy, so he'll cover that, but make sure that your disability isn't your focus when interviewing. You're showing them that you're the person for the job, not that you're the person I almost want to say take the disability out of it. Just show the world who you are as a person. If that makes any sense. Don't show up in sweats and flip-flops. Remember, dress to impress. The last thing you want to do is look like you just rolled out of bed to show up to this interview, because not only are you making yourself look bad, you're not really giving the job coach the faith in you that you want to have, that you want to be employed and that you are looking to be employed. But if you're doing this independently and if you're not working in with anybody, the same tips apply. Do your homework. Go into Indeed, go into Monster, and make sure that the jobs that you're applying for are catered to what your abilities actually are. Now, things you should for sure do or get some sleep the night before. Please don't go into it like a zombie or shoot up on some Monster before walking in and be like, okay, I'm ready, let's go. It's not going to get you anywhere. Bring a resume with you. I always say put it in a folder, discreet, pick any color. I had a red folder that I brought with me to every interview. And I always had a cover letter copy, a resume copy, and references. That way, if they needed references and they asked you, oh, I'll get in touch with you about references, you could say, I came prepared. Here are my references for your review. If you have any further questions, you know, the numbers on my resume, just give me a call. And now it's up to Jesse to teach you all about disclosure and advocacy. Yeah, I can.
Awesome. So we're going to talk a little bit about why you should disclose and why you should not. So it's definitely important that so we just get this started and get everything going, is that it's up to you. It's basically just based on what your confidence level is. But if you should disclose and if something that you want to do, then it's something that you should do. But that choice comes down to you. So why you should disclose, if it's something visible, or if it's noticeable, it's a possibility that if you just say what it is, it can calm you down. It can calm the interviewer down. It could just make everything zen and good. And then the other thing is it may be your benefit to actually say it. You can benefit from a accommodation. That's something that's definitely helpful. That's not something that you may have to do at the first interview, but if you get an offer, that's something that could definitely be helpful. And again, if you don't, if there's an accommodation that you don't need, then, and if it's a disability that's hidden, then obviously, if it's something that you're comfortable with doing, obviously, then do it. Kind of have to gauge it. But if it's hidden, and if there's not a accommodation that can be done, it could make sense to actually not say it at first. So the next slide is basically going on timing. So a couple of these things I already said. So something that's definitely important, that if you choose to disclose during the interview, timing could be helpful. If you do it at the start, that's something that could be helpful because it could calm your nerves, as I just said. And then if you do it towards the end, if it's something that it kind of feels like there's a big elephant in the room, then if you could read the room, and again, if it's something that you're comfortable with, then that's something that you should do. But it is your choice. And something else that could be interesting, if you do have the conversation about it, and the person that you're interviewing with is interested and does want more, you don't have to tell them. You really shouldn't. You should keep it brief, but hypothetically, how you disclose, again, it's kind of up to you, but it definitely gives you different options. So you can just say what it is and end it. That's something that I would particularly say. But there's other types of things that you could talk about. You can talk about how it affects your ability to actually do the job, the type of accommodations that you had during the past, the type of accommodations that you're looking for in the future. I really wouldn't say any of that stuff in the intro email, in the intro interview. After the offer is something that's made, that's something that you can definitely talk about. But during the interview phase, during the start of it, it's good to keep it as brief as possible. And then the final slide would be self-advocacy. It's something that's important. Anyone can do it. It's something that we both have passion for. Some are better at it than others. In the simplest terms, to just summarize things, it's simply just definitely speaking up and advocating for your individual needs. That's an important part of your individual needs. It's not, if you're in the workplace, it's not really systems change. It's not like you're trying to change the world for everyone, for your coworkers. That's something that if your college or if your job has that, then maybe, but in the simple terms, we're talking about self-advocacy. It's advocating for your individual needs. In the classroom, it's something that could mean something that you need help with, some type of aid. If it's in an interview, it's talking at a accommodation that you may need at work. Also, something I can't say enough, if there's an accommodation, I would really focus on that until after the offer has been made. So something else that's important, something that even someone as me is definitely learning. So in order to properly advocate, you have to know who you are and what you need. You're your best advocate, so it's really best to really definitely speak up, talk about things you need. And it's definitely important to have that learning process, have that circle, see how you've grown, see how you haven't grown. It's really important about definitely learning about your individual needs so you can educate others, because you may not know things that you don't know, and other people could honestly not know about things that they don't know. Once you clearly have that information, once you're confident about your things that you need, confident about your needs, go out and get it. Go out and advocate.
And then I'm not going to read through this because it's literally the introduction slide that Catherine read earlier, but I will say when you're advocating, the one thing I do want to stress to Jesse's point is asking for accommodations isn't something that you should be ashamed of in the slightest, because it's something that you need, one, to be better at telling others what you need, and two, it's better for you to learn and get comfortable with the idea of I need help, and it's okay to need help. It doesn't make me a lesser person or a bad person. So thank you all for your time. Can you just unshare for me?
Sure.
Thank you so much, Blagica and Jesse. That was so informative, and that whole self-disclosure, like when and when you do it, it's such a personal and nuanced decision to make. So I can imagine that's something that it would be helpful to speak with you or with your vocational rehabilitation counselor, or you could speak with me. It's something to work through for each individual person. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
And one thing for our students who are on this call, working on learning how to advocate for yourself, it's a bit what you can do with our office here, because at Berkeley, the laws that govern accommodations in the workplace are the same as the ones for you getting accommodations in college, very similar. And so working through that process, learning how to talk, what happens when you're not accommodated, things like that, or if they're not working for you, that conversation is, something that I always encourage students to have with us, because you learn how to advocate for yourself and make sure your needs are being met. So thank you guys so much. And next, I would like to introduce Nicole Dais-Lewis. Nicole is a business relations representative at the Bronx District Office of the New York State Education Department's Adult Career and Continuing Education Services, Vocational Rehabilitation. So that's ACCES-VR, which Blagica and Jesse mentioned earlier. Ms. Dais-Lewis was also a vocational rehabilitation counselor in the Bronx office for 15 years, and she has been in her current position since 2016. She completed her Master's of Science in Education Rehabilitation Counseling at Hunter College. For most of her career, she has been involved in assisting persons with disabilities to enter and maintain career pathways. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Nicole.
Thank you, Catherine. Again, I was about to say good morning. I was telling everyone earlier, I'm used to speaking in the morning, but good afternoon and happy Wednesday. Before I start, I just have to give extra claps to the previous presenters. That was fantastic. I'm not sure if there's a whole lot I can add to the latter half of your presentation, but hopefully I will do it justice and add a couple of notes to what you guys presented. So wonderful information. So as Catherine said, my name is Nicole Dais-Lewis specifically. I am the business relations rep for our Bronx District Office of ACCES-VR. And I'm actually excited to see one of my colleagues on the call from our Queens office, Miss Michelle Delaney, who is our transition and youth supervisor. So I'm excited to have her on the call as well. So before I start, I'm thinking of what the flyer presented, what the flyer showed about this conversation, I'm going to call it, that we're having this afternoon. I thought of two words. Many people know, Michelle knows, I'm a big fan of linguistics. That was my favorite class in undergrad. So I'm a big believer in words having meaning. So I thought of two words, the word support and the word collaboration. So this morning I looked at the definition of both, and I want to read them to you briefly. And as we kind of go through the second half of this presentation, I want you to think of these two words and think of the definitions that I mentioned. So support, emotional or practical help, material assistance, and it's really this third version of support that I want you to pay attention to. To give encouragement to someone because you want the person to succeed. So again, to give encouragement to someone because you want the person to succeed. And then that second word, collaboration, is a partnership, it's a union. And to collaborate is to commit to the possibility of producing an outcome greater than one that would be developed in a silo. Again, to collaborate is to commit to the possibility of producing an outcome greater than one that would be developed in a silo. So for me, in working with staff at Berkeley and all of our other stakeholders that we work with, including our participants, I think of these two words. So into the presentation of ACCES-VR, I'll give a brief overview of what we do. Next slide, please. So under the New York State Education Department, in a nutshell, our goal is to help persons with disabilities to enter career pathways. As you see, specifically, our mission is to help persons with disabilities to achieve and maintain employment and to support independent living through training, education, rehabilitation, and career development. And really, our vision is that all individuals with disabilities who want to work will have the opportunity to achieve employment and independence. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we are part of the New York State Education Department, which means we have offices throughout the entire state of New York. We have 15 district offices and 10 satellite offices as well. Here in the city, I'm part of our New York City or part of our downstate region specifically. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is our purpose and what is our process? So again, our goal is to assist persons with disabilities to enter the workforce basically, or a career pathway. One note to keep in mind though, is that we are an eligibility-based program, not an entitlement program. So if someone is interested in receiving our services, they would actually submit an application with pertinent documentation, and a counsel will help determine if someone is eligible for our services. Next slide, please. So in terms of what makes someone eligible, I'm going to kind of veer off the verbiage on the screen for a moment, but we look at maybe 3 or 4 things to determine if someone's eligible. The first thing is that the individual has to have a documented disability. And remember, I talked about words having meaning. So when you think of the term disability, I think you can get a variety of reactions, a variety of feelings, a variety of emotions of what that word actually means. But I kind of tell people, don't necessarily get caught up in that term. My personal belief is we all have something going on. What you want to label it or call it is obviously a personal choice. But for purposes of ACCES-VR, a disability is a physical, cognitive, and/or behavioral health impairment that may prevent or substantially affect someone's ability towards employment, either to prepare for work, enter, engage. And I want to really highlight also those last 2 phrases, retain and advance. Oftentimes people think that ACCES-VR is just for someone to enter the workforce, but a big portion of what we do is also to help individuals either keep their current employment or maintain it, or even to advance in their career as well. The first and second thing was, again, a documentable disability. Second one, there's some type of impediment. And then third and fourth, we kind of almost hope for or assume is that someone can benefit from our services and that someone requires our services to become employed. Next slide, please. Okay, so types of disabilities. Again, I tell individuals don't get caught up in terms of a diagnosis or a specific condition, but these are just some samples or examples of disabilities that we work with or have worked with. Physical disabilities from arthritis, diabetes, mental health diagnoses, substance use disorder, learning disabilities, intellectual developmental disabilities. The only disability that we don't work with per se, or we refer to our sister agency, New York State Commission for the Blind, is those that are legally blind. They are the experts in terms of accommodating and assisting persons with that specific disability, but all other disabilities would be referred to ACCES-VR. Next slide, please. Okay. If individuals apply for our services and they are receiving SSI or SSDI, I call it SSA benefits or Social Security Administration benefits, those individuals are actually presumed eligible for services. The fact that those individuals actually met the requirements of SSA, they are presumed that they meet our requirements. We still would ask for some kind of documentation as a process goes along with ACCES-VR, because we really want to match a person with the best or most appropriate vocational goal. But for purposes of eligibility, we can use an SSA award letter to document them being recipients of that benefit. Next slide. Okay, so let's assume I've applied for services, I've been made eligible for services. Now I talk about the fun beginning, or I think it's fun, the exciting part. Now, you and your counselor are actually going to start working on what your vocational goal is or may be. The previous presenters talked about having a vocational goal of interest, which is definitely fantastic for us. We can help see again if it's a good match, education-wise, physical. I add spiritual and emotional to that as well. How does the labor market look for that goal? Because even though there may be training, again, our goal specifically is to get you into that field in terms of employment. So we want to make sure there's employment opportunities available. But one other thing I want to highlight that was mentioned, this process or this homework is interactive. All of our counselors, we are master's level counselors, so we are trained in what we do, but this is your journey, right? Your journey. We have to follow our procedures and processes, et cetera, of our agency, but it's so important for you to have the conversation with your counselor, what your interests are. What would you like to do? What have you dreamed of? Maybe what you've done previously is not really fulfilling you. Maybe what you've done previously has fulfilled you and you want to continue with that career pathway. Or maybe you've never worked before and you're not really sure what you want to do. But either way, it's an interaction, it's a counseling, it's again, an interactive process with you and your counselor. So in terms of a work goal, those are some of the things that we look for. Also in terms of it has to be agreed upon with you and your counselor ultimately. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are just some samples of services that we provide or can provide. It's not an exhaustive list, but particularly I want to highlight college training or college services, vocational training. Our previous speakers talked about job coaches as well. Support employment, where it may be identified a person needs some additional supports as they're looking for work. A big portion of what we do now in terms of our caseload is working with our youth population, which has been kind of exciting, I'm going to say. And that can be anywhere from 14, 15, 16 on up to 21, 25. So these youth can be in school, out of school, but it's nice to kind of work with the youth population in terms of seeing what they want to be. What's that famous question? What do you want to be when you grow up? And seeing their interests grow and change as they work with us. But a quick note as well to keep in mind, being eligible for ACCES-VR services doesn't mean you're eligible to receive all ACCES-VR services. Our paperwork, so to speak, or your pathway with us is called an individualized plan for employment, or an IPE, and I love to highlight the word individualized. So I have several what may be disabilities that are non-apparent, one of which is migraines. But if I were to apply for services, my pathway with ACCES-VR may look different from someone else who also has migraines. So that's where that interactive process is with you and your counselor. Next slide, please. Okay, I get excited about this particular slide because this is my wheelhouse. Remember I mentioned a moment ago that individuals oftentimes will come to us and think that ACCES-VR only helps someone enter a career. But again, we also help people maintain their employment. So this is where worker retention services comes in. So maybe you have a disability that unfortunately may be negatively affecting your performance on the job. Maybe you're at risk of losing that current job that you loved for so long. And then also, you may acquire a new disability that may be now impacting your ability to do your job. So ACCES-VR can absolutely help with that. We can do a job analysis where we work with you to see if there are maybe reasonable accommodations that can be provided to help you perform your job. And then also help you with that conversation, as was mentioned by Jesse. What does that process even look like to request a reasonable accommodation, or I'll say RA for short. And I'll talk about that in a moment as well. Vocational counseling to see if maybe it's time to consider a different field or a goal change. And then lastly, we can also maybe provide wage reimbursement to your employer to basically retrain you in a new job or in a new position within the same organization. So definitely please look to us as a resource to help you keep your job if you're at risk of losing it. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a quick graph of what the process with ACCES-VR would ideally look like. So someone would attend orientation. It can be in one of our local offices. Even if you look at, I think Catherine put our website in the chat. Thank you, Catherine. You can check out our website, which actually has some recordings, orientation recordings on the site. If you're interested, you would apply for services, submit an application packet, do an eligibility process with a counselor. And then once you're found eligible, again, all that exciting part that I talked about, that homework piece, you'll be working with your counselor to help develop your goal. And then you'll participate in whatever the service is that you need to get to that goal. And then ultimately the goal is employment, or again, as I like to say, a career. Next slide, please.
Hold on.
Mhm.
It's not letting me go to the next slide. Oh, here we go. Is that it?
Okay, that's it. You got it. Thank you, y'all. So again, as I mentioned, if you look at our website, you'll actually be able to watch a few recordings. They're about 15 minutes or so each, so you can go at your own pace. The first one is an overview of our services, gives you more detail in addition to what I'm mentioning. The second one I always encourage people to take a glance at, even if it's briefly, is how to actually apply for services, what our application looks like, what documents may be needed, and then actually how to submit the application packet, so to speak. And then lastly, if you're looking at a goal that requires college degree or may require a college degree, I would encourage you to look at that third slide or that third recording. Because ACCES-VR, sometimes there's a misunderstanding that it's believed we are like financial aid, and we are not. We're an employment program. So a vocational goal is what drives the service. So if you're looking at a goal that requires college as a service, that may be of interest to you to look at. Again, on our website, you can download our application. There's also a release form there, and there's also a confidential medical assessment. If you have documentation of your disability, please, please, please feel free to attach that to your application when you actually submit it to your local district office. And then ideally within about 2 weeks, you'll be contacted by someone to actually do your intake appointment for the most part. Okay. And I think we just went over that briefly. And then here, I think that's the last slide. I just wanted to mention a couple other things that we talked about, if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay. So, and the other things I just want to add to some of what the previous speakers talked about, in terms of the tail end with that journey that I mentioned, that little graph with the stairs, ideally, hopefully I'll be able to assist with some of those things. If someone can humor me for a second, and in the chat, put what is your thought about internships? What is an internship? Why is an internship a great thing? Maybe why it's not a great thing. I think it's a great thing personally, but why do you think internships are important? And while I wait for a couple of answers, I'll tell you why I think internships are important. I am a huge believer in the power of networking. As Catherine mentioned, I've been in the field for 30 plus years now, and pretty much every position I've been blessed to have has been because of networking. So an internships allows you to network. Please, everyone, please start reading the chat while I'm speaking. I see some wonderful answers in there of what the purpose or what the importance of an internship is. So other than the other reasons, it lets you gain skills, it lets you keep your resume alive, all those great things. ACCES-VR is very big on internships, even for our youth population, for our adult population. And why I want to highlight that so much is I hope everyone that's on this call, be it staff, be it potential students, I hope you're connecting with career services and accessibility services at Berkeley, because they are your conduit towards internships and ultimate employment opportunities. When I remember that phrase I mentioned, collaboration, this is where that collaboration comes in terms of partners, in terms of working with employers, in terms of working with community-based organizations. Those are all key stakeholders in your journey to a career pathway. In terms of, I won't highlight this because it was already mentioned, interview prep, resume prep, totally co-sign everything that was already mentioned. The other thing I want to just highlight as well is reasonable accommodations. My hope is that there are students on this call. If you are not already registered with Catherine's department and her staff, please do that today. As she mentioned, if you were in high school and you had a disability and maybe you had an IEP while you were in school, those services came to you. Once you leave school, you're 18, 21, 22, those services don't come to you. You go, and as was mentioned, you self-advocate for those services. But to know that, and Jesse, I love what you said, you have to know yourself. So at ACCES-VR, we are so big on self-advocacy. We purposely provide those services through our counselors and through some of the vendors that we work with. Again, you've got to know yourself better than anyone else. You will know how you learn. I tend to be a visual learner. You give me a book, I can read it, but I tell you, if you put it in color, I have notes highlighted. If you ever come visit me in the Bronx, you're more than welcome to. Everything is in color. That is just how I process information. So in thinking of me knowing myself, I'm encouraging everyone on this call to know yourself, because once you know yourself, you know exactly what you need to either learn better, do a skill at a job, or learn a skill before you get the job, but definitely perform the essential functions of your job. So you being in school is a conduit to you ultimately getting employment, but those accommodations and those supports don't necessarily go away just because you're in a different setting. What changes though is how you get those supports. So I'm hoping everyone that needs those services connect with Catherine, and how EOR's department connects, and how they work together, and how we can possibly connect, and how Jesse and and his team can connect, is again helping you get into career pathways. In terms of reasonable accommodation, that disclosure piece, oh my goodness, it is a difficult decision. It is a personal decision, but I gotta add, this piece is a legally protected decision. And that's the part that I love to highlight when I work with job seekers and do training on disclosure. It is legally protected in the ADA. So that's a big note to keep in mind, but it is a personal decision, as was mentioned. You may decide to disclose to this employer and not to this one. But the other thing I also want to highlight, and I'll kind of wrap it up on this note, is the only time you need to disclose is if you are requesting a reasonable accommodation. That is the only time you need to disclose. Even then, when you do disclose, it's very specific, very, very specific to the accommodation that's being requested. But as was mentioned, some people feel they want to disclose because they just want to disclose. Even if your disability is more visible, doesn't need to come up. If you don't need an accommodation for that disability, you don't need to discuss it. So again, I just want to kind of again highlight that piece as well. It is a personal decision, it's a difficult decision, but it is a legally protected decision as well. And then actually, I'll lastly end on this note, this other last note, is when you are working with ACCES-VR, please be involved in the process. As I mentioned, this is your journey. Hopefully it'll be a beautiful journey into a beautiful career, as long as you want to be, but be involved in the process. Okay, that means knowing your counselor's email, their phone number, who their counselor assistant is, maybe even who a supervisor is, but being able to have various ways to contact your counselor or staff at the office, whoever that may be. We have the ability to text now. That's exciting for me, especially with our youth. So that is another option as well. And then also I want to add, just as a resource, I can drop it in the chat, or Catherine, if you'd like to, ask Jan. I love Ask Jan. They are valuable resources for employers, for job seekers, for workforce professionals, in terms of accessibility and accommodations for specific disabilities, specific situations, how to start the process, what the process looks like, what the ADA says, and all that other good stuff. So it is a wealth of information. Thank you, Catherine. I encourage you to put that as an actual oh, thank you so much, as an actual favorite on your desktop, because I reference it almost every day, I feel like, but it is a fantastic resource. So on that note, I want you to give yourselves a round of applause for being present this afternoon, and thank you for taking some time to have a conversation. And I'll turn it back over to Catherine and Eeyore.
Wow, that was just the both of you had, there's so many like golden nuggets in there. I think I'm gonna go through the transcript and I'm gonna like pull them out and like put up these quotes. I will post this recording on the Accessibility Services Live Guide. So good and so inspiring. So thank you both so much. If you have any questions for our speakers, you can unmute yourself or put them in the chat. I'm gonna give you time while you do that. I'm gonna read some of the comments we had. Natalia said, thank you for the great presentations. Really appreciate you all. Jackie says, thank you. It's very helpful. Shania said, great information. Thank you. Laura says, thank you for an excellent presentation. Great advice for all people to advocate for themselves and to show how neurodivergent people can truly enhance a workforce. Bravo. Amy says, wonderful, informative presentation, so important for our students. Just so you all know, there's a question about if ACCES-VR is only for New Yorkers, and every state has a vocational rehabilitation department. So you can look it up, and you can Google it, contact me, or I put the links in the chat. Someone, Veronica wrote, she didn't realize ACCES-VR for youth went to age 25. It's like health insurance goes to your 25. That's great. Yes, and then we talked about the importance of internships, which at Berkeley is an option for all our students to get internships. And also to plug career services to, your career service counselors are amazing. You should talk with them from day one. We have a career closet here and with some amazing clothes in there. Like I might go in and like, I see, like I walk by every day. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go take a look. So, talk to your career services counselor and, so that you can, like Blagica said, to dress to impress. So let's see. Thank you. It's great, informative. All right. I don't see any questions. Anybody else have something they want to ask or say?
I have a question with regards to disclosure and legality. I mean, like, does the size of the employer matter, either New Jersey or New York? Like, do employers with under 50 employees follow a different set of rules than ones that with over 50 employees?
I don't know. Do you guys want me to take that one? Okay. So
You can
without,
take it.
okay, thank you. Without getting into too many weeds of it, there is, the ADA does cover certain types of employers. So for the I'm going to say general employees, like not civil service, not state or city, it's 15 or more employees that it will fall under or that it would cover. So in terms of the legally protected choice piece means the hiring process has to be accessible for all. I might be going around the world to answer your question, but I hope I'm going to answer it. So that includes from the interview process to the onboarding process to even after you're hired. And you could have been working for 50 years at a company and then all of a sudden need an accommodation. So if an employer, and for public entities that include state, federal, that's automatic, but for other employers, it's 15 or more employers. But that process of requesting an accommodation, you heard me use the phrase interactive often. It's an interactive process. So let's say an employer of 16 employees, and depending on the accommodation requested, they may feel the accommodation will put them out of business and they may deny that request. There is a process to look deeper into that denial, if you will. It has to be legitimate. I'm using the air quotes, legitimate to that as well. But to hopefully answer your question in a nutshell, it's 15 or the company has 15 or more employees. So there is that process that has to take place.
And you help with the coaching of disclosure as well. Let's say somebody, and I'm thinking about, post-pandemic, right? So post-pandemic, we've been through a lot of stuff in the last couple of years. And I know that I've had students who now have anxiety and depression who didn't feel they had anxiety and depression prior to the pandemic. They've been with the same employer for 5 years, and now they're struggling, realistically. They're struggling with social anxiety. They're struggling with depression. So do you provide assistance with regards to the coaching aspect of things on how to disclose it?
Absolutely, absolutely can do that. If it's, what I would suggest, because I know this could be statewide throughout New York, but if it's not initially discussed, this is where that person is involved in their own process or their own pathway. If they have a question about reasonable accommodation or need coaching on that, how to disclose, they should definitely let their counselor know, and then they can refer them to the appropriate staff member or maybe other resources to help with that, because that piece in itself of what you just mentioned, ER, that's a big part of employment or getting employed, right?
Sure.
So just like we're prepping, when Blagica talked about resume prep and interview prep, reasonable disclosure, reasonable accommodation prep is also part of that process, the way that I see it. And the only thing I want to add to what your question is I totally agree with you. We've all been through this surreal time the last 3 years. So I think all of us have some level of anxiety at a
Sure.
minimum, right? So the only thing with disclosure, again, I would offer to keep in mind, you're only disclosing if you're requesting a reasonable accommodation. So let's say if that same individual, they now have heightened anxiety and depression since 2020, but they're managing it in a sense that maybe they're getting treatment outside, they maybe have informal supports on the job. If they're not requesting a reasonable accommodation, I would offer, there's no reason to disclose. But if those disabilities or symptoms from those disabilities, as I mentioned, are negatively impacting their performance, and they're aware of some type of reasonable accommodation, then I would offer to disclose. But with Jan, I think that would help them figure out what accommodation are they asking for.
Right.
So if I'm saying I have anxiety and depression, and now I'm on new medication, and maybe I need to take that medication at a certain time of day, but it conflicts with me being at the front desk. So maybe my accommodation could be my lunchtime is from 12 to 12:30 instead of 1 to 1:30, because that's when I need to take my medication.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What I'd like to add on that point, I think if you want to ask, because I worked in a company where everything needed to be in writing. So if you're better explaining your accommodation in writing, write it all out and send it in an email, give the person reading it enough time to process it and answer you in a courteous, polite way. And sometimes the disclosure policies or advocacy policies are in your handbook. So once you get hired, I know it's tedious, but read your employee handbook. There's so much information there.
And my role here is, your students can come and speak with me about these questions as well. You know, I'm not just here to advocate for you in the school, but also teach you how to advocate for yourself in general. I posted here the ADA National Network, the technical assistants. You know, the ADA, there are a couple centers around the country. This is all they do. You know, they talk about this, they train about this, and they have people, counselors and lawyers available to answer these individual questions you have. So even if you don't qualify for Nicole and ACCES-VR, you still have someone you can always reach out to. Like Jan is fantastic, but sometimes you just want to talk to someone. So this is a way, and you go to this website, they'll direct you to your center, Northeast, Southwest, you know, and then, you know, for our callers around the country, this is United States only, that you can get assistance. And I'm here to assist with questions such as that. I definitely don't have all the answers, but I would help look and think about it, because a lot of it is because we're all different. We might, let's say, Nicole, you have migraines, I have migraines, but because we are different people, our symptoms might be different and our accommodations may be different, right? So it's always individualized. And that's why that interactive process is so key. And that's why I encourage students to apply for accommodations, even if they don't need it, because going through that process and learning how to talk about it, that prepares you for the workforce or for next step. You know, we are available to help you work through such issues, you know, or when you get denied and you're angry about that, you can come talk to us about that to say, well, this is why, you know, and if you disagree, this is what you should do. And I always encourage students, you know, whether they agree with me or not, to like follow the process, because it takes courage and it takes patience and it takes work and a belief in yourself.
And it's not always easy to advocate for yourself from that perspective. It's not, from a career services perspective, I know that we encourage our grads and our students to advocate for themselves, call the employers, with regards to the job search, but to advocate for yourself with regards to accommodations is even more of a challenge. And it takes, it's not like Catherine, like you said, there's no cookie cutter solution because there are no two people alike. You might have 10 people in the same room and they all have migraines, but everybody's an individual and everybody's got different needs. So it's important to notice that too. So.
Catherine, I just want to add real quick, you mentioned the ADA centers. So the Northeast ADA Center is a team that trains our team. So we are certified ADA trainers, and thank you for putting that in the chat. I didn't even think of that about that, but they're a great resource for us because we're constantly getting updated and new trainings in terms of what are current trends or topics or questions, etc. So that's another site that's chock full of information.
And I sort of see because it's always changing, and the ADA itself is so vague, right? We make it better, we make everything more inclusive by when issues come up that we push it. It's like us collectively pushing the envelope. So I never worry when students are like, oh, I'm so sorry for causing you trouble or whatever. I'm like, it's not trouble. This is exactly what we need to do. If something's wrong, how do we fix it? So. Well, I see, let's see. That's right. Ravina wrote, this is important because I had no idea migraines, anxiety, allergies are considered disabilities. So it is any condition that impacts your ability to perform your job, like interaction between environment and you. So, if something is so severe, it causes like a significant reduction in your capacity to do something. And let's say, accommodation could be working from home, right? That was the big COVID one, right? Things like that absolutely, those are accommodations. And Nicole mentioned the undue burden clause, it's really hard for someone to say no. There's gotta be the company really has, or the school in my case, there's gotta be a reason. So staff have at Berkeley, HR does the accommodations for staff and for students. It comes to me. But as you can see, we all, there's no straightforward answers. So the interactive and the talking with us is so important. And, I feel so lucky to have Blagica, Jesse, and Nicole here today. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for your passion for your work and what you do for your clients and your offices. Clearly, they're very lucky to have you. If anybody has other questions that they haven't posted, but they would like me to pass along to our speakers, I'm happy to do so. And at this time, I'm going to conclude our presentation. So thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you to our speakers for putting this all together. Thank you, everybody who helped out. It's important, to the students who are on, when you pay your tuition at Berkeley College, that's not only the academic side of things, it's the career services side of things, it's the ADA side of things. And once you graduate, there's a lot of options for you if you do need help with agencies that are funded by the government, and it's organizations such as Nicole's and such as Blagica's and Jesse's. So definitely there's a lot of options for you. Again, we may not have all the direct answers right off the bat, but we can certainly help you get to the right answers. We can certainly help guide you. And just because you have different abilities, understand that